And we are live.
Okay, we're live, and I welcome everybody that are going to tune in here. And we today are talking to Allison Jornlin. She is the co-founder of AmericanGhostWalks.com. She co-founded that with her brother, Mike Huberty, and she is starting a new video series. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Paranormal Women: A Hidden History.
That's correct. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thank you for coming on and letting us know what you're all about. So, what got you started in the paranormal? This is a question I pretty much ask everyone.
Well, I think reading, when I first found the paranormal section of our local library and also the library at school, and I think about probably fourth grade, that was probably the time period where it started, where I found out about paranormal things that there were people who said they had seen ghosts or and people who had made contact with aliens or some type of other intelligence from another dimension or another planet, and also psychic stuff. I was very interested in ESP and the idea of mind over matter. And so I just read everything I could get my hands on. And I think a lot of people are interested in the paranormal. The people who are interested in the essential questions, like are we alone and what happens after we die? I think at some point in everyone's life, they face those questions. And then they look to the paranormal for answers. And I think that happened to me at an early age.
I see. I see. So, have you been out doing any investigations then, or?
Oh, yes. Just last night, in fact. um, Mike and I and our team were at the Maxwell Mansion in Lake Geneva,
Okay.
and we had a great time investigating and trying different methods just last night. So that was really phenomenal.
Did you possibly catch anything?
Well, see, that's always the question, isn't it? And I have to share that, I've been interested in this since fourth grade. So we're talking about too many years. But I've been actively investigating for about 20 years or so.
Okay.
And people out there got to understand that usually paranormal investigation is not like it is on TV.
Oh, no.
Oh,
You,
hell no.
Definitely
yeah,
no.
I mean, basically, you're just sitting there talking to yourself, or that's what it seems like until you do the
Right.
evidence review, and sometimes
That's what
surprising things will come through.
that's what most of our guests say. It's like it
Yeah,
seems
it's
like
like
most of the
sitting there
time you're
talking to
sitting there
yourself.
talking to yourself.
Yes.
And that's what it is because you don't always get everything
No.
or
Yeah.
anything. I mean, but just being there because of the history of some of these locations in Wisconsin, and I'm sure you've been to most of them being from here yourself.
That's right.
Um, I've learned a lot that I didn't even know when I was growing up about some of this Wisconsin history.
Well, okay. Let's go down that road, and we can talk about paranormal experiences I've had, and maybe some that I had just this week at the investigation. But first, let's just bring it back a little bit and talk about how Mike and I got really interested in ghost stories.
Yeah.
So again, his experience really parallels mine in terms of reading voraciously about these different phenomena and then wanting at the time as children to investigate in some way and not having any outlets for that. And what's really sad is we lived in this small community called Big Bend, Wisconsin. It's a It's a suburb. It's very rural. There's a lot of farms around that area, and so we didn't have any opportunities for investigation, or so we thought. But Mark O'Connell, who wrote a great book about J. Allen Hynek and is a wonderful UFO investigator, he wrote a book that is still selling very well 3 years ago called The Close Encounters Man. And he was one of our neighbors. I mean,
Wow.
we did not know that we
That's
were
pretty cool.
fellow weirdos. And we could have had like our own little Scooby gang. And it would have totally worked. But when you're a kid, you just don't know how to reach out to people. And we didn't have the internet. You know, this is back in the
Right.
70s. So there was
Yeah,
no
there was
way
no
to really.
internet. There was no internet
No,
back
the
then.
internet.
Yeah.
What was it,
You
like
know.
mid '90s before the internet came into
No,
play?
there. Well, yeah, there was the internet. The dial-up was around, but then there was no actual World Wide
Back
Web.
in the
It
70s,
was
I don't
bulletin
think it
boards.
was.
No, not in the 70s.
No, it
It
wasn't.
didn't come
I
out
think it
until
was
like the
mid-90s.
late 80s.
So there were some government projects, but basically, its availability to consumers was null
No.
until very recently, until the 90s. That's when the World Wide Web became more popular.
Right.
So my point was there was no way to find out who was weird in your neighborhood and who you should be hanging out with. And so, now 30 years on, we're great friends with Mark O'Connell, and we just wish we could go back in time. So the story of our introduction into ghosts and our being interested in offering ghost tours like we do at American Ghost Walks today really goes back to childhood, because my mother was an avid listener of Chicago radio stations. And she would hear this man named Richard Crow, who was Chicago's ghost hunter. And when she was listening to WGN, for example, around Halloween, she would always hear him talking about ghosts. And she was heads up enough to know that we might be interested in that. So she would call us around the radio every Halloween, and we'd listen to Richard Crow talk about these stories of haunted Chicagoland, and we wanted to be him.
Yeah.
And then back in 2006, I got my teaching degree and was able to have my summers off. So then I got this idea, well, hey, Chicago has had a haunted history tour thanks to Richard Crow since 1973. Why can't my city, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, have a tour? I mean, and in years before, we had been in New Orleans. We went on all the haunted vampire voodoo tours they have
that
there.
would have been cool.
Yes. So in the 90s, we were doing that. And then in 2006, I'm like, well, I'm sure Milwaukee has some cool stories of haunted history. And I'm going to do the research and look that up. So I did that. And then in 2008, started Milwaukee's first haunted history tour. And that started to become very successful. And then I was like, bro, you got to do a tour in Madison. And I'm going to start you up with the research, but you got to do this. It's going to be really cool. You're going to love it. And well, he loved it. And he just took off with
it's
it.
Fun stuff.
Yes. So he just took off with it while I was still a teacher. And I was a teacher in a Native American school, Native American primary school. I taught fourth grade and then second grade for 13 years. And so I was still busy with that. That
So
was
you
a
got the
major.
kids when they were still innocent.
Yes. Wow. I wasn't trying to really convert them.
Actually, Joe,
They
she
were
got to
teaching
corrupt
me.
them.
Yeah, they were teaching me. I learned a lot from being there. But my point is that I was really focused on education, on teaching then. And I was still doing the Milwaukee tour. And then I brought in other guides, and they were doing the tour for me. And it was just kind of a side thing that I was doing. And my first priority was being a teacher in a fourth grade classroom. And then I was like, about 13 years in, I saw what Mike had done, where he really wrote so many tours. He wrote one for St. Paul, one from Minneapolis, Lake Geneva, Waukesha. He just took the reins, and there was a tremendous explosion of tours.
Yeah, it's gotten
And
pretty big, I've noticed.
yes, so we have about 12 tours currently operating, I believe. In the time of COVID, it's a little bit dicey, like in Puerto Rico, for example. That was a tour that I wrote back in December 2019, and we launched it, right after Christmas, and it was doing very well, and it was just incredible to say that you have a tour in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And so now that's closed down for a while, but surprisingly, right before the pandemic happened, I was able to jet off to Maui and investigate the community of Lahaina on the island of Maui. And we have a tour going there right now. So if you're in Lahaina, you can take the haunted history tour there. And I was able to go there and research all the stories from that area that really aren't being told in any other way, and make sure that now on a weekly basis we're telling those stories, because every community has some incredible history and also mysteries that are paranormal in nature. And the whole idea of American Ghost Walks is to bring that history back to people, and also give people a forum for their own story and a larger context for what is going on in the community. So the most wonderful compliment I've received from people is when they take a tour and then they tell me, or they tell the guide, wow, I see my city or my community in a whole new way now. I mean, that's transformational. And for me to be able to do that for someone, I really take that as a sacred duty. So that's what we do with AmericanGhostWalks.com. And so we're not making anything up, understand? We're bringing back history that's been lost. And there's always tremendous humanity in a community. And anytime you find humanity, you find ghost stories. So we weave that together into something that's very entertaining for people, but also educational. And so that's what AmericanGhostWalks.com is about. But when I was doing that, when I started the Milwaukee tour, then people started coming to me with their stories, with their ghost stories. And some of them were looking for help. So I started working with paranormal investigators of Milwaukee.
It's kind of interesting how that works, doesn't it?
Yes. So that's a whole nother job, to have paranormal investigators, to have all the equipment, to know how to run an investigation.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit of equipment other than our podcast equipment, because we go out on investigations. And when we started doing this, we actually investigated so far 2 private homes.
Oh, wow.
Because we got asked to come and check this out, because they were like, freaking out, saying this is happening, this is happening. The one couple just bought like a 95-year-old house, and it's like, yep. But when you dig into the history, if you can't find the history of the house, but it's in such a small town that the town and the surrounding towns had a lot of dark history there. So it could have created some of that. But then some of that story came out later because a former owner came by and then told them the story, and they had a medium or something there and found out that the ghost or the spirit's name was Tommy.
Wow, it's amazing what you're able to uncover when you dig into that history.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. And with the power of the internet nowadays, it makes it so much easier.
Yes. I'm surfing newspapers daily looking for stories around the world.
I'm actually a transplant from California.
Oh, okay.
I moved
Very
here in
cool.
'93 and moved back out there in '96 and then back here in '98. But during my time here, it is just like anywhere else, pretty much. There is so much history for every town there is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And there's so much to find, and like you said, a lot of it gets lost in the shuffle. A lot of it gets
absolutely.
pushed in
Well,
the
I grew
corner
up in
somewhere, and
Madison.
it's never talked about or never found
Yeah,
again.
we don't know our history, and that's straight up. That's not just paranormal history. That's just history across the board.
Yeah.
Are you talking about individuals, or are you talking about this country?
Ah, well, draw the conclusions where you will. Yeah, but Madison, you were mentioning Madison.
Yeah, I grew up there.
Yeah, he grew up
Yeah,
in Madison.
yeah. There's our incredible stories there because I helped research for that tour when Mike was starting it. So he has 3 tours, 3 different scripts running in Madison now. So there's like a campus tour and a Capitol Square tour. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah,
There's
I
a lot
grew
of
up.
history on the
I
campus.
grew up sliding down the hill of Sanatorium Hill.
Oh wow!
I grew up playing Ghosts in the Graveyard in Forest Hill Cemetery on Speedway Road. You know.
Well, you'll want to have
So,
him back on just so you can talk to him about the Madison stories.
we were having a blast towards the end there. When
Terrific.
everything got, all the tech difficulties got worked out, it was fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so that's how I got involved in paranormal investigation. I mean, before 2008, I was involved with a certain groups, and I did go out on my own paranormal investigation. But then after 2008, having another group to work with, Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee, that really allowed us to collaborate
Yeah, we met a
and
few of those
investigate
guys.
some pretty major sites. And they have the expertise. Noah Lee is a working scientist, so he knows how to set up an experiment. He knows how to run things scientifically. And so that's why I chose that organization to work with. I only have good things to say about them. So, but in terms of my own paranormal experiences, even though, since the 90s, I've been staying at haunted locations, sometimes with Mike, sometimes doing investigations, I really didn't have anything to show for it up until recently. So I'm happy that I had that. I've had a couple of instances now, which I can't explain away. So
Right.
that's exciting for me now that it's more than just the story when you have your own experiences. One of the experiences I had was in Baraboo at the old Baraboo Inn. And I have to level with you guys. It's kind of like Shakers is here in Milwaukee, where the owners are very, very excited about the fact that they may be haunted, and they use that as a way to promote the business.
Right.
And I think they're ahead of the curve because in Wisconsin there's still a lot of conservatism and people who don't want to talk about their hauntings, especially in Milwaukee. There are places that actively tell their employees not to discuss anything paranormal outside the doors.
Right.
So when you find out that people are actively hiding it, it takes the phenomenon takes on another dimension.
Yeah.
that there is something to it if businesses feel they have to hide it. So Old Baraboo Inn, the owner there is just the nicest guy, but he promotes it to the hilt, as you would if you're
Yes,
trying
he
to
does.
survive with a small business. But to me, that's like a conflict of interest. And I had a hard time accepting that the place might really be haunted. But they invited me in. This was a couple years. Actually, I have to say, this was about 5 years now. The years are really piling on. So about 5 years ago, they had me there to tell Wisconsin ghost stories. So
Right.
they had me do a presentation, and I brought Mike in because I thought it would be cool if we did the podcast there. And so we made it like a big event. And Mike's band played.
Fun
And
spot.
right. So
All right, cool.
it was a lot of fun. But I had an actual experience there. So, and it was surprising to me because, like I said, I'm thinking in my head because I'm very cynical. I'm like, if there's any
Well-
place that's haunted, it's not this place.
Yeah, I mean, you would
Because
think
it
that because of
promotes
the
it
way
so
they
much.
promote it, right?
Right. I'm like, yeah, there's ghosts coming out of every orifice. I know. Demons in the basement. You got like a portal. You got like 50 different ghosts. Yeah. I've heard that in a million places. So I was brushing it off. And then I had given my presentation, and then I went into the other room to set up for the podcast. And everybody was on the other side of the building. And I was just stowing some gear quickly under a table. And so I put my bags under this table where we were going to have the podcast, kind of a panel set up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stood up and I looked across the room and I saw something. I was standing there looking at it long enough to think in my head, what is that? And what it was, well, this is how I can describe it. The only way I can describe it, it was like a ping pong ball size orb that I'm seeing with my eyes, not on camera.
Oh.
So it's not an orb on camera, which can be easily dismissed and many times explained away. When you see it with your eyes, I'd challenge you to explain it away. So I see this thing coming at me like this ping pong ball, but opaque and more yellowish, but about ping pong ball size. And I'm seeing it from across the room, and it's like hanging there. So I have it. I have a moment to think about it, like what is that? And then it speeds up, and it shoots past my ear, and I didn't feel anything. I didn't hear anything, but it was very quick. But the authenticity of the experience is what got me because I flinched because it was coming at my head. And then I was looking around, where did it go? And of course, it had disappeared at that point. But I saw it fly at my head, and I had that normal reaction that you would have if someone whips something at your head, which is to flinch. So
Right.
I know I didn't make that up. And it was kind of embarrassing for me because now I have to tell people I saw an orb, and I have to explain, no, it wasn't on camera. I saw it with my eyes. But then later on, months later at the Milwaukee Paranormal Convention, Shelley Wells was there representing the Old Barrow Boot Inn, and she was talking about stories from that place for this haunted road trip panel. And she mentioned about how the former girlfriend of the owner had repeatedly complained about being dive bombed by orbs. Now, that's not how I described it, but when I think of that description, I mean, it really matches my own. When it flew past my head,
Yeah.
Right.
I felt like I was being dive bombed. So, with that in mind, I mean, that is something that I cannot explain away. I was awake. I was alert. I was not drunk because I don't drink. I was not under the influence of anything. And I was actively not thinking the place was haunted. I wasn't trying to make myself believe. I wasn't being lulled into complacency by all the stories. If anything, I was super cynical. And here this happened to me. And I actually didn't tell anybody about it that night. That was on a Saturday, and then I didn't tell Mike about it, even though he was right there, until that following Monday at night in the evening. I called them up and I'm like, by the way, I did see something. And that was interesting to me too, how even though I'm so into this, it took a while for me to process that that actually happened. And I wonder if people are having experiences like that all the time. They don't know how to explain it. And sometimes maybe they actively hide it, but I think other times they just get caught up in life again and maybe forget about it, or it's uncomfortable for them, so it's easy to bury it. And I just wonder about how many experiences that people are actually having, but they don't know how to quantify it. They don't know how to describe it. So it kind of falls between the cracks. So in terms of what happened at the investigation this week at the Maxwell Mansion in Lake Geneva, it's still very much in the unknown box, but I was able to work with a couple other people and investigate through what's called the Estes method. After actually Estes Park, Colorado, it was pioneered by Carl Pfeiffer and Connor Randall. And it's like the Gansfeld, where it's, if you know parapsychology, so it's sensory deprivation for a receiver who sits alone in a room with a blindfold over their eyes and noise-canceling headphones. But the twist is you're not just in there listening to nothing with people trying to send you things in another room, like Gansfeld. Instead, you have the ghost box, the SB7, piped in through your headphones, and which I don't know why that would work. I mean, it's just switching between radio stations.
Yeah.
And you're getting little snippets of what was ever said on that station. So to me, why should that work? But I was open to trying it. So we have an investigator up in the attic as a receiver, and then two of us in another room, and we're listening to him through a baby monitor. So he can't see us, he can't see anything. He's just listening to the SB7, trying to get into an altered state where he's just repeating anything he hears as a word or a phrase or a sentence. And then we're downstairs in another room, and we're asking questions of the spirits, ostensibly coming through him. Or
Right.
we're trying to have a conversation with someone who's not there. So we're asking questions, and then we're taping that, and we're taking notes. And what was really startling to me was when it worked. So when I went up there as a receiver, and one of our tour guides for Lake Geneva went up there as a receiver, we were only getting very small snippets, one word or numbers. We were getting like streams of numbers. That was really weird. And then we sent somebody that was with us just to take footage, just to help us take footage, and he was game to try it. So we had him go up there, and here he's coming up with whole sentences. And sure, he could just be more imaginative, but what really freaks you out is when you're asking a question and suddenly he's answering it, or when you're doing something and he's referring to it. Like Melinda, one of our tour guides in Lake Geneva, we had heard from Max, who was upstairs, a name, Jason 18. And then we found this portrait in the room where we were with some young men in it. And so she took it down thinking that maybe he was one of the men in the picture. And then she's sitting there with me pointing at the picture. And that's when Max says, point. And there were so many things that happened like that where we would forget that we're not really having a conversation with anyone. I mean, like, Max is not in the room with us because it seemed like it was two-way. Because we would be asking questions, he would be coming up with answers that matched the question, or telling us something that seemed to confirm something we were doing. So that to me was really interesting, and I brought the rig. I have everything here, so I can practice at home, because I know my home. I don't think it's haunted, and so I want to see if I practice with it enough. Can I get can I get similar results? Like if I practice with my husband, uh, and then maybe it's not a ghost, maybe it's some kind of ESP type situation. But whatever it was, it did seem
Uh-oh.
interesting. Are
Yeah.
we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you kind of froze there.
Oh, am I okay now?
Yeah, you're fine now. It was
didn't
weird. It
freeze
was
on
like
my end.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know. I might be having issues here. Charter just supposedly upped my bandwidth, and ever since I've actually been having some lag issues.
Oh no,
So
that's
you
not the way
take
you
and
want
look
that
at
to go.
things. You look at things from like every possible angle there, almost. This
Yeah,
It
sounds
sounds
like.
that way.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm not tied to any narrative. I, I am not a skeptic. I'm not a believer. I'm just somebody who's interested in what's really going on.
You just want answers.
Yes, I just want answers. I don't care what those answers are. I just see a mystery and I go after it. And whatever it comes up to be, I'm going to report that. If it's not paranormal, I'm going to say that too. So I'm going to experiment with the Estes method and see what happens. And then, I can go to Mike and the other investigators and say, well, I was able to get similar results. So I don't know if it has to do with the spirits or if it has to do with some kind of psychic connection between people. But the whole idea is there's a lot of questions out there. Nobody has a definitive answer. So we have to look at it from all angles, and we have to bring in other cultures as well. That's why, I started this new YouTube channel, Paranormal Women: A Hidden History. You can search for it on YouTube. I'll have a custom URL in a few days. But right now you can go to facebook.com/Fortean Writer, and that's FORTEAN Writer, WRITER, and I post the videos there along with other crazy things that I do and stories that I write. So, but the whole idea of that channel is to get different perspectives, talk about people that started us down the road of paranormal investigation, and relearn what they taught us. So, have you guys had a chance to watch any of the videos?
No,
No,
not
I
yet.
actually haven't.
Okay, well, I'll tell you all about it. So, as I said, my Facebook page is facebook.com/Fortean Writer, and Fortean it's named after Charles Fort. So if you're a weirdo like me, maybe you subscribe to Fortean Times out of the UK, which is the best paranormal magazine out
I've
there
heard
for
of
my
it.
money. Yes,
I haven't.
definitely get it.
I haven't really seen it, but I have heard of it.
Very, very thoughtful articles that, again, look at things from all angles. So Charles Fort was independently wealthy. He had a small inheritance. And then so he was able to, in the early 20th century, go to the New York Public Library every day and search through newspapers and archives looking for strange stories. And he wrote 4 books about what has come to be known as Forteana, or Fortean phenomena. So we're talking about anything strange, UFOs, ghosts, of course, but also the Bermuda Triangle, or maybe sky beings, like sky jellyfish, like anything that is weird, anything that he couldn't find a reason for, like strange rain is what he's most well known for, like rains of frogs and fish and angel hair. And so incidences like this are the ones that he found combing through the papers in the New York City library. And then he compiled them all into 4 books. So that was really inspirational to so many. And he became known as the father of the paranormal. And I really love Charles Fort, but we're talking about 1900s here. And he did do some amazing things. He inspired research into the Bermuda Triangle. He coined the now popular term teleportation. But I got to wondering, if there's a father of the paranormal, who was the mother of the paranormal? And so I was really excited to actually find one. There's a woman that you probably never heard of. Her name was Catherine Crowe, and she was born in 1803 and died in 1876. So that gives you an idea of the time period. She was most active in the mid 19th century, so of the 1850s. And she was the original ghost hunter, Catherine Crowe. And have either of you ever heard of her?
No.
No. So you got to check out my channel because
Right
she actually
The one that's up?
Let's see. Do you have it up?
Yeah. You should see it.
Yes, that's the one. Yes, so I have a few videos up there right now. I'll be putting another video up there soon. But so let's talk about Catherine Crowe. My latest video deals with Catherine Crowe, who conducted the first ghost hunt in 1854. And many people are credited for their roles in paranormal investigation, but she hardly ever is. She wrote this monumental book, which I have right over here, in 1848, called The Night Side of Nature. Can you guys see it?
A little bit.
So this is 400. This is 400 pages.
Wow.
Of ghosts, telekinesis, telepathy, dreams, like prognosticating dreams, doppelgangers, poltergeist, twin telepathy. So, NDEs, OBEs, anything you can think of that you might have thought were more recent phenomena because you didn't know about historical researchers like Catherine Crowe is in this book. And she's actually the reason that we know the word poltergeist and the word doppelganger. Because even though she was from England, she could read French and German. And she would read voraciously the literature of other cultures. She was a mystery writer. So she wrote novels, but then she was also reading this extraordinary literature coming out of Germany. Things that were written by doctors and scientists studying strange phenomena there. And she was so motivated that she thought, I have to write this book, The Night Side of Nature, because the Germans are coming out with all this amazing research, and I have to share that with the English-speaking public. So that's why we know the word poltergeist and doppelganger today, because she was learned enough to learn from other cultures and then bring that knowledge into English language usage.
Hi, I'm Allison Jornlin.
Watch the videos later, guys. You got me live.
Sorry, that was not intended.
That's okay. So
That was weird.
so this book actually came out in 1848.
Wow.
And then people began contacting her, of course, about their ghost stories. And then in 1854, Catherine got the opportunity to investigate a haunted house that was owned by a lawyer that she knew. And he let her in along with a few other people. She had two other women and two other men, and then the lawyer that owned the property. He was really upset because he was hoping that he would be able to rent this house out. And he never was. He lived in Edinburgh, Scotland, which is where Catherine lived as well. And he wanted to rent his house out, and he could never keep tenants. No matter how low he lowered the rent, they would never stay. And so he told Catherine about some of the reports of his former, very short-lived tenants. And so she came over to investigate, and she brought some very reputable witnesses from the community. And one of the people she brought was actually a clairvoyant. But this woman wasn't clairvoyant unless she was hypnotized. So they took her to the house. Yeah, and I
That's
wonder
kinda
why this.
strange.
That's kind of interesting.
Well, you would think so, but that was really a major influence on the paranormal in the 19th century. Hypnotism was hugely popular. It was called mesmerism or magnetism at the time, and we know it today as hypnosis. But the magnetizers, the mesmerists, were discovering some strange things when they put people under. They were trying to use it for health reasons, and then some really strange things would come out, some psychic things. So it wasn't usual for Catherine, who studied mesmerism as well, to think, well, I'm going to bring one of these people who are sensitive to that to this house, and I'm not going to tell them it's haunted. I'm just going to say, hey, we're really interested in this property, and we know you're perceptive. So when you're under hypnosis, so we're going to take you there, and just maybe you could tell us what you think about the house. Is it a good buy? And so they took her there, they hypnotized her, and then proceeded to question her. And they asked, well, what do you think? Should we buy the house? And she said, no, 2 people met their deaths here. 2 people were murdered, not in this house, but in the earlier house that once occupied the site. And they will trouble you. And then as they just sat there in the darkened room for a long time, nothing else was happening. And they thought, well, maybe if we extinguish the candles, maybe something will happen. And then they all did hear this sound that they describe as 2 pieces of iron clanging together. And they heard that by the door of what was supposed to be the most haunted room, a parlor in the back of the first floor. And they heard this clanging by the door and couldn't find any reason for it. So everybody there heard that. But then the clairvoyant, who was still ostensibly asleep on the couch under her magnetic sleep, as they called it at the time, roused and pointed to the center of the room and said, there, look there. And everybody whipped around. And of course, they didn't see anything. They had extinguished the candles, but still nothing was evident. And until the medium, this clairvoyant, took Catherine's hand, and Catherine was able to see light, some faint white light emanating in waves from the floor. And then she prevailed upon this clairvoyant to squeeze her hand every time the lights would come up, so she could see if the experience was coinciding, and indeed it was. But they were the only ones to see this. And then, of course, afterward, Catherine thinks, well, maybe I should have had her reach out and hold the hands of each of the investigators that was there consecutively to see if the vision could be passed on to them as well. But she, of course, didn't think of that until afterward.
That's how
So
some of the best
I
ideas come to be,
I
though.
know, right?
Yeah, it is.
But it didn't happen in the moment, and unfortunately, we don't know if she ever followed up on it. But then a little bit later in the night, Catherine herself would experience this bright diamond of light sparking in the center of the room. And she didn't tell anybody else until the end. And they were all outside discussing their experiences. And then Catherine admitted, well, yes, I did see another light. And that's when the lawyer who owned the place piped up and said, did it look like a bright spark, like an oxyhydrogen lamp, like a type of spark that might come off a lamp like that? And she said, yes, that matches exactly what I saw. But no one else had seen that. So it was interesting that the experiences were so contained. Like certain people had experiences, most of them did not. And the only common experience was that metal clanging sound that they all heard.
Right. Right.
So that was the first ghost hunt in 1854. You know, certainly there were demonologists before that, but I would argue that this was the first investigator just going into it with an open mind, not trying to say there are demons in this house, I'm going to try to exorcise it or exorcise the people inside.
Right.
Instead, going in just to figure out what is happening in a supposedly haunted house and to bring a clairvoyant along to try to make contact. So that's exciting to me. And the fact that she was able to bring forward so much interesting phenomena in this book that is still relevant today. And it's free. You could read it tonight. Go to Project Gutenberg and you can download this book for free. And it's sad that people don't do that and they don't know the history of ghost investigation, because maybe we should be bringing hypnosis back into paranormal investigation. Maybe we've lost things from the past. So these are the kinds of stories that I'm telling on my new YouTube channel.
Well, listening to what you were saying about that as well, you can almost say that could also have been the precursor to seances.
Well, actually,
because of how that was conducted.
Yes. And what's interesting is in 1848, that's when the Fox sisters in New York became known, and the whole spiritualist movement started in the United States. And then it would come over a little bit later into England, but it was just an incredible coincidence that Catherine Crowe had the book The Night Side of Nature come out that year, and because of that spiritualist craze that was just becoming so popular, her book really came out and became an international hit.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yes.
That's really cool.
And we don't even remember her name today.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even, her name didn't even ring a bell whenever you mentioned it the first time there.
Right, and it usually doesn't. And so that's the purpose of the YouTube channel, is to tell you about some amazing women that really had a huge influence on the paranormal and are still unsung today. And of course, men made a lot of contributions too, but their contributions are generally better known. That's why
That's because back in those times, women weren't listened to, men were.
Right. and hopefully that's
and
changing
a very
today.
Unfortunate circumstance, but that's the way it was. And,
yes.
If I think honestly we would be a better world today if more women were listened to during those times, rather than pushed into the corner and said, no, go do your chores or go do whatever you are supposed to do as a woman.
Yeah, well, it's not too it's not too late to balance that equation. It's not too late to bring in that other side and to learn about some of these amazing discoveries which are still relevant today.
Yes, they're very relevant today.
Yeah.
That is a very intriguing little story. I'm gonna have to download that book.
Yes, absolutely. Please do. And the little trick that I use
All right,
is,
where'd you say to go to download that?
oh, Project Gutenberg. So Project Gutenberg is a library of free books available via PDF. So check that out.
Project Gutenberg.
Yes.
Spelt like it sounds?
I think it's GUTTENBERG. Something like that.
B-E-R-G or B-U-R-G?
BERG. But it's not a spell. I didn't know there'd be a spelling test. But I think that's close.
Wait a minute,
Kinda
you're
like
a teacher.
Kind of like the Steve.
You're a fourth grade teacher. You're supposed to know
I'm
them
not
all.
anymore. I'm not anymore. But I do study. I do study before I take tests. But yeah, if you just Google that, I'm sure you'll find it.
I don't think I ever studied for a test in my life.
Well, so how are we doing on time? Would you
Oh,
like
we got
to hear?
plenty of time.
Oh,
we
got
got.
plenty of time. If you want to do anything,
We went
I mean,
2 hours the
we
other
went 2
night with no problem.
Wednesday night we got talking with one of our other guests that we've had before, and I mean
Dale
time.
Kazmarek.
Yeah, Del Kazmarek.
Oh, Dale, yeah.
And time flew.
Yeah, we just.
Oh my God!
We got
He
him talking.
just kept going and going and going and going, and we went from
It
subject
was
to
fun.
subject, and it was great. It was awesome.
Well, I'll
I
tell you
don't mind.
about two other women then.
Okay.
Yeah, go
These
ahead.
because there's so many amazing stories, and there's many women that I'm going to profile on the YouTube channel. But I just I'm going to start. I've started with these three. So another one you need to know about from the 19th century is Alexander David Neal. Have you ever heard that name?
Nope.
So have you heard the word tulpa?
Yep.
Okay, what's a tulpa? Can you guys tell me?
From what I believe, a tulpa is that if you believe in it enough, it comes to be.
Yes, it's a thought form creature.
Right.
And that concept and that term was brought into English language usage by Alexandra David Neal. And she got that term from Asia. She was an author and an adventurer who was born in 1868. She died in 1969. So that's 101 years
Wow.
of
crap.
an incredible
Yeah,
lifetime.
1860. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So-
101.
Yes.
That's a long life for back then.
Yes.
That time period.
Absolutely. And she had quite a wanderlust, I think you would say. As a teenager, she was from France, and then her family moved to Belgium. But she would often run away from home as a teenager to traipse about Europe. And then by the age of 21, she got to Asia because she became an opera singer. And she was able to get into Asia through her many gigs and performances. So by 21, she was in India. And she developed this interest in Buddhism and adopted that as her religion and wanted to study with the monks in India, in Tibet, in many different countries in Asia. And so she studied the languages of these communities and would learn the language, like learn Sanskrit, learn Tibetan, so she could read the ancient scrolls. And she visited these countries at a time when women, again, didn't have much mobility, but somehow she just ignored that and just found a way. So, for example, the city of Lhasa in Tibet was forbidden to foreigners, but she was able to meet up with a young man who was a Lama. He was studying Buddhism, and he accompanied her on most of her adventures over 40 years. And when he was a young teenager, she would pose as his mother. So, although she had European features, she was very tanned because they were out in the elements. They were in the Himalayan
Right.
mountains, and her skin was very tan, but she would use Chinese ink to darken her hair, and then she made her own extensions using yak hair, and then she would use like anything, like soot from the pot, to make herself fit the part of a llama's mother. And so she was able to break into the city of Lhasa that way. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to take much because she didn't want the items she was hiding under her clothing to show through. You know, she wanted to take surveying equipment and camera and things like that. But instead, she would settle for a pouch of money in case they were kidnapped and had to pay ransom, and a pistol. So she hid these things under her clothes and was able to get into the city of Lhasa in Tibet before any other Westerner. And as she began to get to know monks in these different countries, they would share their secrets with her because upon knowing her, even though she was a woman, they would see her sincere interest and how much work she would put into translating ancient texts, for example, and learning Tibetan, for example. And so she gained their respect. And also, there's a strong belief in Asian cultures of reincarnation. So they began to believe that she might be a reincarnated Lama, you know, born into a Western body, but coming back to her old home. And so she wrote a book called Magic and Mystery in Tibet. And she talks about telepathy, levitation, the control of body heat, all kinds of amazing skills that Buddhist monks had, and that some of which she was able to witness. And in terms of tulpas, she was able to create her own. So she had read a lot about it, and then she thought, well, I'm going to go into seclusion and meditate on this person I'm trying to create. But instead of trying to create a figure of a Buddha or a god from the Asian heritage, I'm going to use a whimsical character from Western heritage. So she picked the character of Friar Tuck, and she imagined him into existence. And on her expeditions, as she was traveling in sometimes groups of people, she would see him riding by on the exterior of the group, for example. Or, most compellingly, other people would see him in her tent. I mean, how do you explain that? That's my tulpa. That's not my boyfriend. That's actually a tulpa I created. So at some point, though, she began to see that she was losing control of him, and he was becoming thinner, leaner, and meaner. And she decided she had to do something about it, because in her study of the Tibetan beliefs in tulpas, it was quite common in the stories for the practitioner to be overwhelmed by his creation and sometimes even killed by it. So when she started to see that he was departing from her control, she said, I have to do something about it. And then she went about, and I don't know exactly how she would even do it. She went about destroying him. and it took her 6 months. It took her 6 months to be able to dissolve all traces of him in her meditation practice, so that no one else saw him, and she stopped seeing him as well. So you can find these amazing stories in a book called Magic and Mystery in Tibet. This is also available for free on the internet. Check sacredtext.com. But I also did a search, and I found it on a Theosophist website. Although she wasn't a Theosophist, she studied at the Theosophist library in the beginning of her travels. So although she didn't espouse their same beliefs, they often talk about Alexander David Neal. So you can find Magic and Mystery in Tibet as a PDF free online, and I would encourage you to do so.
Okay. I wrote that down.
Okay, great. All right, so I've got one more for you. Her name is Zora Neale Hurston. Now, she was born a little later in 1891 and died in 1960. Now, she was also a novelist, and her work became popular, her novels became popular during the time in the 1920s and 30s known as the Harlem Renaissance. She was an African American who came to fame in New York during that Harlem Renaissance, but actually she grew up in the first black town that was created in the United States and incorporated in the United States called Eatonville. It was an all-black town of 300 some people, and so she never grew up knowing racism because her father was the mayor. He wrote the laws. He helped write the laws for the town. So she never had that feeling of being looked down on until later in life. And then she said, maybe people are discriminating against me, but I can't understand why they would deny themselves the pleasure of my company. So she kind of really believed that if anybody was prejudiced against her, it was really their problem. And that's where she kept it. So along with being a writer, she also had this interest in anthropology and actually got to study under Franz Boas, who is known as the father of American anthropology. And they became quite close, and he was able to secure funding for her to go back to her hometown of Eatonville, Florida, and start collecting African American folklore. And they both felt this was really important because everything that was done before had been done by white people and wasn't always as authentic as you might like. Right. But she could come at it from the perspective of being an African American. And to Franz Boas, this was very important because he was trying to fight social Darwinism. And it was his idea that he was able to permeate through American anthropology that every culture has something to teach. And in doing that, he helped her so that she could collect those things from her culture. So she wrote this book called Mules and Men, which is interesting to me. It's really funny. It's African American tall tales from her home of Eatonville, Florida. But then at the end, it takes this bizarre turn where she must have just learned about voodoo and was so excited about what she learned that she converted. She actually left Eatonville, and the book changes where it's very funny and irreverent, like all the way through. This is just folklore. There's no truth to these stories that she's telling, but she's trying to preserve this heritage. Right. And then she hears about the conjure, as they call it, where she's from, or hoodoo, this practice that the people would use to gain justice. So in that time in the African American community, sometimes you could not get justice. Law enforcement wasn't on your
Mm-hmm.
side. So what could you turn to? So a lot of people would turn to conjuring to make sure that justice was done. And I think that's what fascinated her so much and convinced her that it was an important part of the culture. So she went to New Orleans and she found one of the former students of Marie Laveau, the voodoo queen of New Orleans. His name
I've
was,
heard that name.
yes, his
Marie
name was
Laveau.
Luke Turner. And she studied under him and many what she called two-headed doctors or hoodoo priests. And so she went through elaborate initiation rituals and recorded the details in Mules and Men. And then some years after that, she was able to get a grant from the Guggenheim to go to Jamaica and to Haiti and study voodoo there.
Wow.
So this book is a book that came out of that. Can you guys see it? It's
Oh,
called
yeah.
it's called Tell My Horse. And this is another amazing book. And so she went to Haiti, and many amazing magical things happened to her there. And she's a skeptic in that she doesn't just accept everything at face value. When she sees something extraordinary, she probes into it. But if she can't explain it away, if there is no reasonable explanation, she doesn't do it. I mean, she just reports on it as is. So there are some amazing stories in here. So that's why I would encourage everyone to read it. But I have to share that she was actually the first person to ever photograph a zombie. So, and that picture appears in this book. So I had never heard this story before. I had heard of Clairvius Narcisse. That was a zombie story from Haiti that came to light in the 70s and then was picked up by Wade Davis in his book, The Serpent and the Rainbow. But I had not known of these other historical cases that Zora Neale Hurston talks about in this book. And she met a zombie named Felicia Felix Mentor, who was a woman who had a small child back in 1907. So she had a husband, she had a son, and then one day she just sickened and died. And they buried her, and that was it until 29 years later when she's found wandering along a dusty road. And she is taken to a place that she is able to remember, and her brother is able to identify her because he still lives at the family home.
Wow.
So there are a lot of amazing stories about voodoo, and some of these stories make it hard to sleep at night. But if you're interested in other cultures, reading this book wouldn't be a bad place to start. And reading Alexander David Neal for the Asian perspective, the Asian Buddhist perspective, and read Catherine Crowe and learn about some of the German and French and English phenomena that were happening during the 1700s, 1800s, and so forth.
You got to remember, though, we are a young country compared to the rest of the world.
We are.
And our history holds a lot, but it pales compared to what Europe has, or Asia has, or India, or any of those over there have.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a lot that we can learn from these other
Oh yeah,
cultures.
there's a hell of a lot we can learn from these other cultures.
Absolutely. And I did find this. I think I found it on academia .org for free, but I also bought it.
Yeah,
So,
sometimes it's nice to have the solid
oh
object in
yeah,
hand rather than the PDF on the computer.
right. One of the tricks that I use is I download the PDF and I have a voice reader so I can clean the house
Now,
and
see that
such.
I could do.
Yes,
I
yes,
don't.
you should do that.
I don't like reading books because my eyes aren't too well.
Yeah, so
Well,
you can download something called Voice Dream, and you can program the voices to read to you. And I have Tell My Horse on here. I have Magic and Mystery in Tibet on here, and I have all of Catherine Crowe's paranormal works on here as well. And it
it's
really
all on your phone.
helps. Yeah, it's all on my phone, and I can just hit it, and the voice will read it to me.
Yeah, I got
So,
that. I got that. What is it called? That Amazon thing. That
oh,
that tablet fire thing or something.
yeah, yeah.
So I can download books and stuff in there.
So
Terrific.
he has Alexa.
I've also
Wait,
got Google,
yes.
Yeah, they won't
but
argue with each
unfortunately
other.
yeah, I was just gonna say, unfortunately they don't argue with each other.
That would be fun if they did.
Alexa and Siri's does though,
Really?
isn't it? Siri's?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Siri.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of great resources out there available, and many of them are low cost or free. So there's amazing studies that you could be doing right now that have nothing to do with TV. You know, you're just probably going to see the same thing on TV over and over again.
Yeah, I don't watch much TV.
Yes, a paranormal TV, there's a formula to it, and it has little
Yeah.
to do with the truth.
No, it's got everything to do with ratings and making money.
Right. If you're
Exactly.
interested in the real stuff, you got to read books. And they're out there for you, and there's ways to listen to them if you're like me and you know, have a hard time staying awake when you're actually running your eyes over a page.
Well, that's
Now-
how we did most of our research. Is I went out and I got books from local authors like Chad Lewis,
Oh
for
yeah,
example, or
Chad's awesome.
I looked into Linda Godfrey because of the Beast of Bray Road, for example. You know,
Yep.
things like that.
They're both
So
good friends.
I don't watch a lot of that stuff on TV because I find too much of it to be fake or scripted.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't trust the Ghost Adventure guys. That just to me, the first ones I ever seen looked too scripted to me.
Absolutely.
So-
You know, there's a conflict of interest there.
Yeah, and those are the kind of shows that I feel make what you do and we do or attempt to do make it just seem like it's all grouped in together, and
Right.
it's not. We look at it in a different perspective.
Absolutely.
Like I've said to others, I am my worst critic because if I'm out filming, if I'm out doing any investigations with Joe and everything, and I feel that maybe I caught something, I want to try and debunk it myself.
Absolutely.
And I would rather do it that way because I want to be my own worst critic.
Yeah, you got to have that ability to step back
Well, we
and
also
be objective.
yeah, we also gotta sit there and keep an open mind when we're out there because anything's possible. When you look at things, and when we go down to there, I come up with some of the most common possibilities, like misidentifications of a cryptid, somebody saying, oh, it's Beast of Bray Road. Well, this is Wisconsin. We have wolves. We have hybrids.
Yeah.
Those hybrids get really big and then too expensive to feed. People let them out in the woods. They're going to survive.
Absolutely.
There's plenty of food out there. How many times do you hit a deer, or see them?
I haven't hit a deer.
I
wouldn't know
hope
what
I
that's
never will.
like.
I
was
hope
trying
I
to get
never
her
will.
reaction from the peanut gallery there, but she's not listening to me.
Yeah, she's not listening to you. His wife has hit 3 deer.
Oh,
Since
man.
we've lived out here in the 5 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad she's okay.
So,
Oh,
Wow.
she's fine. It's the car that took the
but
front
see,
from her.
we live
Oh,
out.
yeah.
I live out in Watertown now. I moved away from Madison. I got as far away from that place as I could. You know, Madison's a lot different than what it was when I grew up in the '70s and the '80s. You know, so but
Definitely. Now I was gonna mention something that I discovered on Amazon Prime the other day.
Yeah.
It's a show called Lore,
Oh, yes. Aaron
and
Mankey.
yes, Aaron Mankey. Yeah,
Hmm.
I listen to him every now and then on the podcast, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But what I liked is the first season. The second season kind of felt weird trying to watch it. It was almost as if they tried to turn it into more of a um, like like what's that word I'm looking for?
It's too
You know,
sensationalist.
no, where it's like the whole thing of the lore lasts almost an hour long of video of like movie type video,
Hmm.
like a show, and then instead of just going and doing the lore like they did in the first season, and then the second season just goes right into like almost like you're watching a something like Supernatural or something like that.
Right. Oh, I've just watched the first season. I'll have to I'll have to check out the second season. But I listen to the
So
podcast.
you know what I'm talking
there's
about then.
nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that show, though. I
Yes.
like
And
that show, Supernatural.
Well, that's not what I'm getting at, Joe. I was
I
trying
know. I'm screwing with you.
whatever.
and he came to Madison. When was that? In February. Two, yeah, 2020. So it was February, I think, or January, and it was at one of the theaters in Madison.
That
Doing
would
a
either
stage though.
it would
That
either
was
be the Orpheum or
I forgot which one
I
it is.
can't remember which
The
Yeah.
one
one
on
it is.
Fair Oaks,
Yeah, Majestic.
the Majestic.
Yeah, I can't remember which one, but it was really a great show. So yes, I love history and I love weird history. So Laura's a great one if
Oh
if
yeah,
you
oh yeah.
if you love that.
Well, he's one of them. Whenever I was watching his first season of that, he's one of them I understood or figured out by watching it about the rope tied to the bell goes down into the coffin.
Oh yeah,
And
We were just talking
and
about that the other
yeah,
day.
we were talking with Dale about
Saved by
that
the
and
Bell.
Saved by the Bell. That's where that term comes from, Saved by the
That's
Bell
right.
or Dead Ringer.
Dead
Dale
Ringer.
said Dead,
Dead
Ringer,
Ringer.
also is something that comes
Well,
up from that.
bringing that back to Haiti, at least in the 30s, this book came out in 1938. So when Zora was in Haiti in the 30s, she knew that the Haitian people, because she was talking to them on a daily basis, had this extraordinary fear of zombies. Not only the horror of your loved ones dying, but also the indignity of them being taken and sold into slave labor after death, and that they'd be somewhere on a plantation working naked in the dust and losing all their identity. And so this was a horrific idea that this could happen to your loved one. So what they would do is they would often poison the corpse to make sure the person was really dead, or cut open the corpse. Or my favorite is they would rig up a knife or another weapon so that when the voodoo priest on the dark side called a Bokur would open the crypt, the somehow there'd be a spring action release where the corpse would stab the Bokur. So that was my favorite. That idea that they were actually actively sabotaging graves to protect them from grave robbers who were actually intending to revive the victim and
Turn them into a
turn
zombie.
them into a slave to work for free on their plantations.
Wow.
Oh,
That is some crazy stuff.
Yeah. So if you like these stories and you've never heard of women like these, I've got plenty more for you, and they'll be on YouTube.
well, I just
Again,
subscribe to your YouTube channel
oh
so that I
great,
get
That's why.
updates.
That's why you heard yourself there in the background. Whenever
oh
I
great,
went
because you were
there
No,
to
I
subscribe.
subscribing.
muted it before I did the
Not
share
him,
screen.
me.
Well, that's
Oh.
That was
terrific.
me.
That's terrific. So you'll be seeing more videos coming out with amazing stories like these, and you can just go to YouTube, search for Paranormal Women, and you'll find it, Paranormal Women in History. Or you can go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/Fortean Writer. Or if you're interested in ghost tours, you can check out AmericanGhostWalk.com.
Ghostwalks.com.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could put more than one down here.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you
Yeah,
very
well,
much
you
for
know,
having me on.
StreamYard's updating every day, so
I know.
or
I know.
often, so who knows what's next with them. But till next time,
Yes.
let's see, what is it? Next, where's my book? Here, so I
I
can
don't
do
know
my
where
little
your book
announcement.
is.
I wasn't prepared, sorry. We are at the 18th.
Yep, today's the 18th.
So our next talk, oh, this is going to be a good one. Our next talk is Wednesday the 23rd, so that's next Wednesday. We'll be talking with William Harder, the dude that interviewed Charles Manson 30 plus times.
Wow. That's going to be an interesting show.
And
Yes.
we got connected to him because of my niece out in California. She's friends with him.
Wow.
And then after that, we are going back to Bray Road on Lee Hample's farm with Dale Kazmarek. We're going to do a duel as long as
Oh,
the
wow.
rain doesn't wash us
as long
out.
as the weather holds and there's no heavy rain or anything.
And that one's
We're
going to
gonna do an
be somewhat of an
overnight there.
overnight one, yeah.
Terrific stuff.
So
Well, have fun.
Oh,
I
Uh,
hope you find a monster.
to see all our updates and this edited footage later, you always check out utterlyinsaneproductions.com.
Yep. Now, Allison, before you go, is there anything that you need to know or say about anything that you may have added to the Ghost Walks or anything like
Oh,
that?
I should mention the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference is coming
Paracon.
up in a few weeks. So you can go to Milwaukee Paranormal Conference, I believe is the website, MilwaukeeParanormalConference.com.
And that's all online this year.
And that's
Yes.
going to be all virtual.
So,
this year,
because
right?
I'm already registered, you
Yeah,
can
so am
register
I.
Oh,
to watch
terrific.
it for free. You can watch all of that for free. And this year, because it is all online, so make sure you register. It should be very interesting. They've got a lot of guests. Even your brother's going to be there with his band playing as well, Sunspot.
And
You
I'll
want
be
to check these
speaking.
people out.
You'll be
but-
speaking?
Also, yes, and also John Tenney and Brandon Masulo, who is a parapsychologist who studied at the University of Edinburgh.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of interesting things going on at that. All right, till next time, stay safe.